thank you for taking the time to join this program. We welcome you all. My name is Ifeyiwa Egwaoje. I am the fellowship lead for Ashoka Africa. I'll call on my colleague, Santiago, to please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. As Ify said, my name is Santiago, and I'm a venture representative for Ashoka East Africa. The venture program is the one that helps us search and select new innovators, systems changing social innovators, sorry, and becoming new Ashoka fellows. I'm also a program associate at the Globalizer, which is an advisory program for Ashoka fellows from all over the world. In every edition of the program, we select 12 fellows working in different thematic areas, and we match them with a team of pro bono advisors from different consulting firms, like for example McKinsey or PwC, who offer PwC, sorry, that they offer their time to help the fellows to advance in their systems change strategy. It's a pleasure to be here again, and I hand over to you, Ify.
Thank you, Santiago. So I'll just give a run through of the agenda so that we know what's coming, and then we can jump right into it. Please, I'd like you to introduce yourself, use the chat box, tell us your name and where you're calling from. So for today's program, we have the welcome and the check-in. We have introduction of moderator and the coordinator. Then I'll be framing the session. And we'll have the panelists introduce themselves. Then we can jump into the panel session, which will take about 30 minutes. And then we have the Q&A, question and answer session. Then we will have the last minute remarks from our panelists. And then we have the feedback session and wrap up. So this particular session is actually the collaboration session. Ashoka has developed a framework that synchronizes and multiplies the impact of our fellows without impeding their individual mission. From these efforts, we have learned that value can be maximized when for-profit organizations collaborate with social entrepreneurs instead of creating entirely new organizations. We have also learned that impact can be accelerated when traditional non-governmental organizations collaborate with social entrepreneurs. We have also learned that social entrepreneurs collaborate when they collaborate with the public sector. There's the possibility that they can influence policy, which will hasten systems change. So in this session, we'll be talking with an Ashoka fellow who will introduce herself very soon. To facilitate this conversation, we also have leaders in the from INGOs, International Non-Governmental Organization, as well as the private sector, to dissect this issue about collaboration between these key areas, as well as we'll be listening to their experts' insights about these issues. So for us to be able to have this conversation, we have Caroline Sedaloff from Social Initiative. We have Wamuyu Mahinda, who is also an Ashoka Fellow, and she is from Collaborative Values Partners, as well as Matthias Kure from Action Aid. So for the next 15 minutes, I'm going to call on the three of them to tell us a bit about themselves, as well as talk a bit about their organizations. So I'll go to the Ashoka Fellow first. I'm going to call on Wamuyu Mahinda. So please introduce yourself and tell us about the wonderful work that you are doing in Africa.
Thank Ify. My name is Wamoyo Mahinda, and I am an Ashoka Fellow, and I'm proud to be a change maker. I was recognized as an Ashoka Fellow or change maker in 2010 through the work that I was doing with youth in Kenya. My program, the Youth Banner, was supporting youth in entrepreneurship. So youth entrepreneurship, of course, is one, as you know, if you're in Kenya, is one of the ways that young people get employed. So through my work and interaction with other people in the space, Ashoka found me and they told me, you have the DNA of a fellow. And I was therefore invited to be a fellow. Now, having worked in that space for a few years and experiencing different challenges, especially challenges around collaboration, where we had so many players, both local and international, coming to solve the problem of youth employment in Kenya, I realized that I needed to bring my innovation and wear a different hat and say, okay, we have a challenge in youth employment. We need to solve this problem, but there's a bigger problem. We need to come together and build synergy so that the synergy we build has a bigger impact and a systemic change like we believe we need to do in Ashoka. So I put together an organization called Collaborative Value Partners Africa. And this organization very specifically brings stakeholders together so that they can think together, in fact, identify the actual problem together, innovate around the solution, and then bring in the partners that would fill whatever the gap is that they're trying to solve. So in this case, if it's a youth employment challenge, bringing in partners that understand the soft skills that youth need, the upskilling or skills gap that youth need, and of course, the development partners that bring in the funding so that together we are able to form a consortium that has a better impact and a bigger impact than a single organization working together. So I realized that even as I was putting this platform together, there's a big interest in social entrepreneurs working in collaboration. And just earlier this year, we organized a webinar with Ashoka, inviting social entrepreneurs to come and understand how to work in collaboration other than in silos. And it was oversubscribed. We have over 200 social entrepreneurs joining to understand that aspect. Therefore, it means we're in the right place and in the right time when we believe that how to solve problems, we have to solve problems through collaboration. So I'll be talking more about my experience in this area, but I'm the managing partner and convener at Collaborative Value Partners Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wamuyu. I'll call on Matthias Kure from Action Aid to introduce himself and tell us about the work that they are doing.
Thank you so much. My name is Matthias. I work with Action Aid, and Action Aid is a global federation that works to achieve social justice, gender equality, and poverty eradication. And we are unapologetic in advancing women's rights and ensuring that women living in poverty and exclusion are at the center of our work. I am based in Kenya, but I'm in Denmark for a short period of time. I am the social entrepreneurship program lead in Action Aid, which means that I am sort of like managing the collaborations we have with social enterprises, mostly in Kenya at the moment. And I'm super excited to be part of this session because I actually think collaboration is what we need right now in the INGO sector. I think the INGOs are working a lot in silos, and it has been a bit frustrating actually to be trying to push this agenda within the INGO sector to say that we need to collaborate with new types of partners. People that are running businesses are not necessarily bad people or people who only care about themselves. There are actually a lot of social entrepreneurs out there who have, great passion for social change, and we should be able to tap into the work that they're doing. And there are a ton of arguments for why we should do that. So back in 2018, we launched a program called SDG Ambassadors. And at that time, we collaborated a lot with Ashoka, British Council, Growth Africa, and the UNDP. So it was many different partners that we tried to bring on board this conversation. The program seeks to sort of develop like customized support to specific social enterprises that we have sort of picked through a case competition, right? So we have some criteria, and then the social enterprises apply, and then there is a case competition, and we, it's a pretty classic model, right? But we try to listen to their needs. So it's sort of like we can do fundraising support, we can build investor credibility, marketing, distribution, promotion support, even sales, partnership development, business development. So we have a lot of different things that we are able to do, but we are able to do that because we work with a lot of different partners. And that is the key here, right? That we tend to listen to what is it that they need from us, instead of saying this is the program that we have built, and then now you're part of the program and you're going to run through all of these things. Maybe you don't need some of it, but this is just how the program works in this accelerator. So we try to do it a little bit different. Also, we have been working with these enterprises since 2018, and that's roughly 3 years. A lot of accelerators out there and incubators, it's a short program, maybe a 6 month, 1 year. And we sort of say, like, let's work together. So I'll give you just one example on how we have done that. So we work with a social enterprise called Science TV. It's a TV station for, people living with disabilities. They do customized information. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, it was extremely important that this media station was there, because a lot of the information that we received from the government in Kenya was not really taking into account people who lives with the disability, right? So we did a partnership with them and the Media Council of Kenya. Actually, the training happened last week, and what we did with the Media Council of Kenya was that we conducted a training of the PWDs that works with Science TV to sort of like get this certificate, so they can enter press release situations, because you need a certificate in Kenya to be able to be part of some of these media happenings. And unfortunately, they didn't have that, because this Media Council of Kenya had not conducted training specifically for people living with living with disability, right? So bringing those partners, like these stakeholders together, was really successful, and now they have done successful training, and they will get this certificate so that they will be able to do like good journalism around the counties in Kenya. So yeah, just one example of how we have brought people in the sector together and supported Science TV, which is a social enterprise. Yeah, that's all for me now. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call on Caroline. Please introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here with all of you, and really excited to hear about the questions also later on from the participants. So I'm Caroline Cederloff. I'm in Sweden. I'm the co-founder of the not-for-profit organization Social Initiative that we founded in 2002. I have a background from international development from the large organizations. So I lived and worked in Zambia for the World Health Organization for a number of years, and then moved on and worked for the World Bank, and running social programs in Latin America, in Asia, and in East and West Africa. And that's where I had the opportunity for the first time to come in contact with and closely work together with social entrepreneurs on the ground. And I was then also part of the team setting up the global fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. But in 2002, then we founded Social Initiative, and I did that together with a partner that I knew from my studies in economics, and she had a background instead from business. So she had been working with EF, which is youth language learning firm, sending youth across the world to learn languages. It's a big Swedish entrepreneurial company. She then worked for Coca-Cola when Coca-Cola established in Sweden. And before we started Social Initiative, she was a management consultant at Boston Consulting Group. So we looked at our different experiences from these very different sectors at the time, and noticed and commented on and reacted on what several of you have already mentioned, the silos. That you had the corporate world, you had the civil society, the NGO world, you had the government, and there was basically no interaction whatsoever between the different silos. So our aim was really to break down these walls and start creating partnerships and exchange and learnings. And what we did was we wanted to work actively and engage actively the private sector, the corporates, and the employees in the corporates in contributing to a better world and contributing to the development of society. And we, through my experience with working with social entrepreneurs, I had seen the strength in working with social entrepreneurs and saw that if we could collaborate with some of the best social entrepreneurs in the world and help them scale up, that would be a very effective and efficient way to achieve change. So those were two of the cornerstones, the private companies and the social entrepreneurs. And through this then three-party collaboration, we aimed at having a positive impact on society. And for the social entrepreneurs, we contribute with funding and know-how, best practice, experience, and then for the companies, we work a lot on integrating this social engagement into their organization. So it's not like a traditional corporates provide Christmas funding and then they checked that box of contributing to society, but rather to have them actively participate and involve all their employees actively. And in order to do that, I think a core piece to that is to have the engagement aligned with the corporate core business. So what we did in order to achieve that was basically to turn the whole traditional fundraising sector around. So instead of going around fundraising for a specific cause and knocking on the doors to different corporates, we take a starting point in the corporates. So looking at and having the conversation with the corporate, we look at what would make sense for this corporate to engage in. What is the core business and what are the different aspects that this corporate could contribute with? And from there, we go out and do a search and selection and a careful due diligence process to find the best social entrepreneur for the corporate to collaborate with. So we've sort of turned the whole thing around. Yeah, I think I could actually stop there for now. I think we'll get back to some of the other parts later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline. I have a follow-up question to what you just shared for Wamuyu and Matthias. But before that happens, I want to invite the participants, please make use of the chat box. Send in whatever questions or challenges you have in the chat box. And as we go along, we will call on the panelists to respond to that question. So we are going into the panel session proper. And I'm going to come back to the experience that Caroline just shared about the partnership between social entrepreneurs and the private sector. So I want to ask Wamuyu and Matthias, we know that these silos even though they have different roles, they also, the government, the private sector, and the social entrepreneurs, in as much as they have different roles, they also do complement each other. So I'd like you to share, if you have like a practical example of them working together, having them, collaborating and working together. Do you have any practical example that you have been involved in that you'd like to share?
Yeah, thank you, Ify. Yes, I didn't mention government, and of course, when we talk about collaboration, especially in social entrepreneurship, we can't ignore government, because they avail the enabling environment that we need to get work done. Now, when we think about collaboration with government, there are many dynamics that play. And to be able to even give an example, I need to explain that government has like 3 areas that collaboration can happen. So one of those areas is based on the government-driven agenda. I mean, like every government has got its agenda for the time. If it's county government, it's got its objectives. If it's a country, I mean, the national government, like in Kenya, we have the big 4. So that agenda is very important when you're thinking about collaboration with the government, because then you have to be able to squarely be part of that. I mean, if whatever you're proposing has to be in line with the agenda of the government. And a lot of times what happens is that what is in line with the government agenda is on their budget. So the collaboration happens through procurement, where the government says, we're thinking about youth in Kenya, we're thinking about how we train youth in Kenya, and we're thinking about how we skill up technical, youth that have gone through technical trainings and so on and so forth. So then they put together a procurement process, and if it's a social entrepreneur, they have to go through the whole tendering and so on and so forth. So in my particular experience in that particular way of collaboration, the government was looking for, should I say, an expert in business to take through ICT owners in their businesses through training, so that they can understand what is important to keep a business running and how to keep the clients running. In other words, business development services. And we tendered through the normal procurement process, and it was a very, very tedious exercise, because the first document that came was like a 30-page document that required that we fill in things that we had never filled in. In fact, you can give up before you even get to the end of that process. But the beauty of that is that after the whole process, we were shortlisted. And in fact, we were four organizations out of the many that had applied were shortlisted for now the second phase of that procurement process. And the biggest question, in fact, to anybody that I told that I had been shortlisted was, how much did you bribe the guys at this office to shortlist you, because the people believe that to be able to be shortlisted for a government tender, you have to know some people in there and you have to bribe. And that is not the case, because I didn't know anybody and I didn't bribe anybody. And I was shortlisted among the 4. And we continued giving in our skills and expertise and our solutions. And we were given the job. It was a 3-year job training, Pasha centers in Kenya in 42 counties actually. And we did a very good job, because at the end of that, when Deloitte did their M&E, they were very happy with the work that we had done, having gone through the whole process. And the government was very happy with this. So in that kind of a collaboration, it is an interesting collaboration, because government wants to come in at different touch points. When you launch the program, they want to be there as to be part of that launch. Together with the development partner, this program was funded by the World Bank. So World Bank was there, the government was there, and every other partner, even other private sector partners that were involved, were there. And they were very excited to be part of this launch. And then along the way, when we visited the different counties, we interacted with the governors and the people in the counties to ensure that they were happy that we were there, and we acknowledged them, and the collaboration happened like that. And every time where necessary, we would make sure that we thank them for their support and the enabling environment that's happening in those spaces that we're working with them. The other interesting thing around there is that every government office wants to be appreciated for being ahead of the other. So when, for example, we visit some counties and then we go to a different county that is doing better, and we acknowledge like we tell the government, oh, we are very happy with the work that's happening in your county. You're doing better than many other counties. That makes them extremely excited, and the collaboration gets even deeper and richer. So we learned to to play the game. Now that is one kind of collaboration. And by the way, I want to tell social entrepreneurs and other people that it's like applying for a job. When there's a procurement process, you apply for it. You can either get it or not get it. It doesn't mean that because you didn't get it, somebody else bribed. Not necessarily. It could be that the other person was better than you are. And when your time comes, you'll also get it, and you'll be able to do or give those services to the county and work with the government. The other collaboration comes with a consortium. Like most of the programs, you have donor-driven programs in countries. The donor comes in and identifies partners that can meet the needs, whatever the needs are, and they form a consortium of several partners, a combination of private sector and the donor, partners, and then the visit. Then the whole consortium visits the government and explains what it is that they have in mind. The government becomes part of that. And again, as long as it's meeting the agenda of the counties or the national government, usually that is not a problem, because then you're bringing funding, and funding is appreciated by most governments. So the third collaboration comes through things like emergency, like the pandemic we've just had. We've had very, very many collaborations that have come as a result of the corona pandemic. Nobody expected that before it happened. And because it did happen, the collaborations started to form, and then we have different people coming on board to solve that particular problem. And by the way, I want to state that social entrepreneurs are very key in these collaborations, because they are appreciated for innovation. They are appreciated for understanding homegrown solutions. Social entrepreneurs are very down to earth in terms of solutions. They can articulate issues in a way that many other people are not able to articulate. So if you're going to have any kind of a consortium and you don't have a social entrepreneur, you're missing out, because it means that you're losing somebody who can really give you some in-depth into this. The other thing is that social entrepreneurs look at impact. They're very particular about the impact that is being formed through the collaboration. And they'll always be out, they'll be the first ones to point out if that's not happening. What are we hoping to get? Who is doing what in this collaboration? And of course, in my work as a convener at the Collaborative Value Partners, those are the things that we look at. We look at what it is, the process, and who is doing what in that collaboration. For government, it's not necessarily that straightforward when it comes to the discussions around the consortium, because in a normal partner collaboration, everybody is a part of that discussion, is a part of the implementation process, is a part of the M&E, and is a part of all that. But the government is very clear about what its role is in a partnership. One is conducive environment. What do you need from us? You want officers to work with you, to take you where you're going? We can avail the partners. Do you need rooms for training in these places? We have centers where this can happen. What else do you need from us? So they avail the conducive environment. Then the other thing they do is avail their presence. When it comes to launching these programs, like I said earlier, they avail themselves, and they'll come and give the best speech ever. And you'll be very happy about that speech, because even as they come with a muscle, depending on who you invite. If you invite a cabinet secretary, you find that media is there. Other private sector people you didn't invite also came, because maybe it's an opportunity for them to meet the cabinet secretary, and therefore they open up that kind of a space for you as you do this. But consortiums with government, again, are not that straightforward, because you have to, should I say, in Kenya we say, you have to know people. You cannot form a consortium with government unless you know who you're talking to. Much as we say that, should I say, what is the saying about six degree of, there's a way we say that, 6 degrees of separation. That's what I'm trying to remember. Much as we say that everybody is 6 degrees of separation, meaning that everybody should be able to get somebody by the 6th person. Working with government is a bit more complicated, because knowing people in government is not necessarily that easy. But let me not go into that and say that it is possible, it is happening. We are doing it. We formed a consortium that did the first business plan competition in Kenya, and we had private sector, we had government, we had donors and everybody, and it worked fantastic, and it continues to work. I mean, even if you look at today, the programs are being run by MasterCard Foundation, by USAID, all those partnerships, have government, private sector, so many other people coming on board to make a difference in the work that's happening. So I think unless there are questions later, I think I have more or less touched on how government works.
Yes, thank you so much, Wamuyu, for sharing that. I have one follow-up question, and it is in government regulations, and even here in Nigeria, some regulations are quite restrictive. We see that sometimes social entrepreneurs face some challenges in the registration process. Sometimes it takes too long. And then some of these regulations tend to restrict these social entrepreneurs from scaling their businesses or the programs that they want to, as someone who has been there and done that, I am wondering if, and another thing is, there's this fear of working with the government because of course, the bureaucratic process, as well as when you were talking just now, you mentioned, you need to know someone. So one, I'd love you to share with us how give us like a step-by-step how you were able to approach the government. And then the second question would be, how should the government position themselves to become more approachable by social entrepreneurs so that doing business or doing work across and making impact becomes less daunting?
Thank you for that question, Ify. Yes, the registration of social entrepreneur organizations is a big challenge, I agree, because like you rightfully said, some are NGOs, others are small and medium enterprises, others are what we call not-for-profit, which are like company limited by guarantee kind of registration, and private sector and so on and so forth. So I think depending on the registration, you do have restrictions, yes. And especially NGOs, because NGOs are not supposed to be profits, and they're supposed to work in a particular way that is monitored by the NGO board. So I think that notwithstanding, and as long as you don't break rules, it is possible to work around those challenges. Because, for example, if you're running a not-for-profit that is also, for example, making money from one of the enterprises that, for example, in my company, because I was training entrepreneurs, I also had an enterprise that was connected to the organization. But what we did is we plowed back everything that we got from that enterprise back into the organization, so that we were not doing anything against we're legally correct. So I think that's the important thing, to know what is possible, and therefore do your homework in terms of understanding what does that registration you have entail, what is possible and what is not possible. In a situation where you feel is curtailing you from moving forward, you can change the type of registration you have. You don't have to be an NGO. Even being an NGO is a problem. You can be an SME. You can be private sector. You can change or have a private sector arm, which a lot of people are doing now. So what they end up doing is having a hybrid organization that has got an NGO sector and a private sector, and they call themselves hybrid. In Kenya, of course, we have nothing called hybrid in terms of legal status. So what we do is play around that and have the two organizations, and they both work together, and there's a kind of a collaboration between the two organizations that meets the needs of your organization in terms of reaching to the clients or your constituents in this case. So therefore, when you specifically coming to work with government, I think you work at the level where you are comfortable. That's what my experience is, that if I know people in the county, then I start at the county. Let me not be too ambitious to go and look for the cabinet secretary if I don't even know how to talk to that person. I start at the county, because a lot of homegrown solutions have a way of scaling to national. So I go to my home location. In fact, the other day, I was talking to a social entrepreneur who said, I started my initiative in my school, the school next to my village. I went there and I started training young people or mentoring them in my school village. That before I knew it, the county was asking for my skills, and very soon I'll be scaling to national. So there are many ways of going about this. Don't do what you can't do. Start where you can. If you're privileged to sit at the high table with cabinet secretaries, take advantage of that. Talk to them and tell them what you're thinking, and let them introduce you to the other cabinet secretary that is probably close to in terms of the work that you want to do. So the different opportunities arise, and it all depends on where you're at and who you know. But I encourage social entrepreneurs to come out and talk about what they're doing at every table, because a lot of people have come to me not because I knew them, but because I talked about what I did. And after a certain function, it could just have been another social function, somebody comes to me and tells me, Wamoyo, I understand you're doing 1, 2, 3. Can we do this together? So it doesn't have to be me. It necessarily going directly to the person. It's sometimes the other way around.
Thank you so much for that. So let's go to the INGOs being represented by Matthias. So Matthias, my question for you is, with your experience in the INGO sector, what do you think social entrepreneurs need, one, to be able to get in the door? How do you think they can position themselves, looking at their strategy, impact, to be able to get a buy-in from international non-governmental organizations?
Thank you for that question, and also thank you to Wamoyo for the presentation on the government. I think that was very insightful, very interesting, actually. So I would say that the main problem for social entrepreneurs, or let's say people who run a social enterprise, is that that's not the usual suspects that we work with, right? It's pretty unusual for INGOs or NGOs to work with social enterprises simply because they are, they're also profit oriented to a certain extent, right? But there are INGOs and NGOs that do support social enterprises. So the first thing to do is to map who are these INGOs and NGOs, right? That's the logical first step. And then it's important to remember that the INGOs, what they do is that they pay somebody or an organization to produce some sort of outcomes, right? To do some social work. So if you're able to do that in a more efficient way, in a better way, maybe even in a more innovative way, then why would they not work with you? Of course they would, but they're not used to working with social enterprise. So they also need some, you need to put yourself out there and talk about what you do, and first of all, like map those INGOs and see if you can set up a coffee meeting with some of the key people, right? Because they are approachable, they are interested in some of these things. Maybe you know somebody who works in an NGO, you can talk about what you do and stuff like that. So I think it's also important to know that social enterprises or social entrepreneurs are being told to know how to do a investor pitch. It's very important for you to know how to, get funding and pitch your organization. But if you're pitching for a collaboration with an INGO, you're doing something slightly different than what you normally do, right? So you also have to know what is it that the INGOs or the NGOs wants to hear, like what is important for us, right? So obviously we look at the social impact more than the profit, obviously. We also look more at, the integrity of the business. There's a thorough due diligence process going on. We care about whether you have a sexual harassment policy. We care about whether you have maybe even a safeguarding policy, a child protection policy. So we care about a lot of other things, right? But if you have those things in place and you have been able to map some INGOs, you should really go for that meeting, because that would open up some doors. And it's also what I think is needed in the INGOs. We need to start working with different partners than only working with CBOs. That's my opinion. I think we should work more with social enterprises for a lot of reasons, right? Yeah, so to answer your question, I think it is a lot about knowing your NGO pitch, mapping the right NGO, getting a coffee meeting with them, and then there you go. And of course, when you map the INGO, you also have to look at what's the target group, who are they working with, what have they done before. So there is some little bit of work to do, yeah.
Thank you, Matthias. I'm glad you talked about CBOs because a lot of these social entrepreneurs are actually community-based organizations, grassroots organizations who are responding to social problems from the community level. One follow-up question that I have is, One, I'd love you to share insights on working with Ashoka East Africa on the SDG program. And then two is how can INGOs position themselves so that they are solving the problem, the other way around, rather than, have a thematic area that CBOs can apply to or social entrepreneurs can apply to. Why not, have thematic areas based on information from the grassroots organizations, from the CBOs, rather than have it the other way around?
Yeah, okay, so basically to answer that, most INGOs are not that independent, they have donors that, give them money, right? Basically, that's how it works. So they work with broad themes. So for example, I could give you an example of climate justice or economic justice. But if you are a social enterprise working with something that is, sort of like helping the climate, I mean, then you would probably fall under that category. So it's still pretty broad, but there will always be boxes, there will always be categories, because it's politics, it's policy, right? It's like how it works. So, but I think there's still a lot of like flexibility still, like you just need to know which program to apply for or which organization to work with, because I think that goes for any kind of funding, if the donor or the person wants to fund your business or your CBO doesn't really fit what you're doing, then it's just like a bad match. So that is also very important when you want to work with INGOs or NGOs. Come again with your second question, please.
Insights from working with Ashoka East Africa on the SDG program.
So when I came to Kenya back in 2018, I was setting up these partnerships, right? And I think with Ashoka, there is like a lot of people want to work with the fellows. It's pretty common to want to work with the fellows. And it was like, I felt that, these are our fellows and maybe you will be allowed to work with them. Like we just need to know and, blah, 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 a lot of things, right? So I felt like the Ashoka has like some interest in also not exposing them to any kind of collaboration, right? And that was actually a challenge, I think, because when I'm looking back, I think that there would have been more fellows which would have benefited from a collaboration with ActionAid, which were not really part of the, the case competition. So, there are challenges because we also maybe think that, we are looking for the same money, we're looking for the same funding, stuff like that, right? And that's sometimes just like a matter of like, sitting down and discussing that, we are collaborating, we are not working against each other, we should work together and it makes sense to work together, right? So I think that is like a takeaway, right? But for NGOs, it's kind of strange because we are just nonprofit, right? So we're just like, let's work together, guys. And then sometimes people are like, what's in it for me? What's in it for my business? What's in it from, and we are not that good at that. So maybe we should also just like improve a bit when we approach some of these, institutions, I would say. But I think what we have done together with Ashoka, which is really interesting, is that Ashoka has this huge network, like they are the place to go to if you want to know what's going on in the social entrepreneurship sector in Kenya. They know what's going on, and I'm actually really interested in maybe even contacting Wamuyu and like thinking about some of the things she's doing. I think it sounds really interesting. We also do programs on entrepreneurship, and I would love to work with her, so of course, this is one of the values that you create, right? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Matthias. Let's move to Caroline. Caroline, how we want to look at the private sector now. So how can social entrepreneurs collaborate with the private sector and in a win-win situation, such that the social entrepreneurs idea is not usurped by the interest of the private companies, but rather they maintain their vision and then still maintain the relationship with the private sector. So if I'd love you to share your experience on that for the benefit of all.
Thank you, Ify. Yeah, that's a really important and interesting question. And I think before I dig into that, I should just also clarify from my presentation that as Social Initiative, we work mainly with Swedish corporates, although they might be international, multinational companies, but based in Sweden. So we work, for example, with PwC and KPMG, and then with some international manufacturing companies, etc. But most of them are based in Sweden. And then when it comes to the social entrepreneurs, we work with and support social entrepreneurs in East Africa, in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and also in India, and also a few in Sweden. So just to give you a little bit of the background. And then I think how you frame the question is really good. And I think the starting point for any social entrepreneur to approach a corporate for collaboration has to be, you have to be true to your mission. You have to be well grounded in your theory of change. And that has to be the guiding star for you all along, and even as you approach the corporates. And then how do you then align that with something that is understandable and interesting for the corporate? And I think, again, the SDG framework, Sustainable Development Goals, is a really good framework for finding those commonalities. So in your theory of change and in your mission, you will have touched upon a number of the SDG goals, probably. And today, many of the corporates are also very aware of the SDG goals and have also defined which SDG goals do they approach, which SDG goals do they work towards through their core business. And then finding those commonalities, finding those joint SDG goals makes it so much more powerful, because then you come from different sides and different approaches, but working towards a common and quite well-defined goal. So I think that's key. Another thing that is key and that the corporate world understands very well is working towards a joint goal, defining the result. What do you want to see after X number of years, or towards the end of this partnership, or after a few months, or whatever, but define that common goal. Where are you heading towards together? And KPIs, indicators, all of those aspects are things that the corporate world understands very, very well. So if you can agree on a joint and measurable outcome and impact, ideally, from the collaboration, I think that's a really good way of working together. And then I think also starting with what your needs are. What do you as a social entrepreneur need? And that might be everything from funding, which is core to everybody, but there might also be other aspects where you need input. So having thought through that beforehand and approaching then corporates who might have that knowledge or know-how or have those products and approach them with that in mind, I think is also good. And then coming back again also to our starting point to find a good alignment. So if you work, for example, we work with Fatherhood, who is producing light for schools and hospitals and so on. And they are, through our collaboration, supporting Solar Sister, which is also social entrepreneurs spreading light. In their case, to the last mile and not to offices. But again, it's a common goal, it's a joint mission, and you come into it from different angles. So I think when you sit as a social entrepreneur, looking for which corporates would make sense to work with, where is there logic? And then I think also being clear to the corporate that this is a journey that you're embarking on together, and it's not a fairy tale. You know, it's a journey. You're embarking on it together, and it will have its ups and downs, but you're in it together with this common goal. I think that's another good way of thinking about it, and good way of communicating about the collaboration from the very onset of the collaboration.
Thank you so very much. This has been quite insightful. I'm really excited about all the information that has come out from this conversation. I'm going to open the floor now for questions, Santiago. But just before we do that, I have one question each for you. And I just want you to think about it by the time we come back for you to give your last remark. I'd love you to just respond to that question as you give your final remarks. So my question to you is, to Wamuyu, the question is, how can social entrepreneurs, not with government and not with private sector, how can they collaborate and work together to effect change? That's to you, Wamuyu. And then to Caroline and Matthias, my question to both of you is, how can government, private sector, and social entrepreneur form a coalition to, solve the problem? So putting the three together, in a space to solve a problem, how can this happen? So I just want you to think about that, and then you respond when we come back to you for our final remarks. Santiago, please.
Yeah, so I would like to ask the audience if anyone has any questions to address to any of the panelists. Feel free to just jump in, or you can also write it down here in the chat. But in case because I'm seeing that there's no questions yet, so maybe just to ask another open question to the panelists, what are the main barriers or challenges when collaborating when collaborating with the government or with the international NGOs or with the business sector? What are those main barriers or challenges in this type of collaborations, and if you have a practical example on how to go about it?
Okay, I think I can go first. Thank you for that question. My experience is that leadership is very key in how collaboration happens. In fact, I forgot to mention when I was introducing myself that because of that challenge, I'm actually now researching on the influence of leadership on collaborative value, and I'm very specifically looking at team leadership, and in Ashoka we have what we call teams of teams. So we are looking at different teams working together and how that affects collaboration. And in the finding of the research is that there are many components that affect how we collaborate, because the leader needs to understand what are the dynamics in the group. What are the conflicts, for example, that come from every group having its own vision and mission? Because we are coming together as a partnership, but we all come from a different space. We have our goals, we have our vision, we have our, and we have our social theory of change. Like Carol says, you need to have your theory of change. So everybody has their theory of change, and then you're coming together to collaborate. So those are some of the challenges, because they bring about some kind of conflict that you can't ignore. And then the other challenge is information sharing. You find that you're already in a collaboration. We're not sharing the information as quickly and as clearly as we should, to be able to make the impact that we want to make. And I don't want to go into the solution for that now, because you asked only the challenges, but the leadership is a very key component in the challenges of collaboration.
Yeah, and feel free to add on how you go about these different barriers and challenges. If you have like a practical, like, very precise example, that will also help the to reflect.
I think I can also mention a challenge, actually. This is probably not the most popular comment, but I think when I have been participating in different, like, you know, if you go to these, for example, Growth Africa, they have like these events where investors come and, you know, entrepreneurs come, they pitch their ideas. If you have been participating in a few of them and some of these conferences on social entrepreneurship, I think, unfortunately, I think it's still quite hard to find really, really, really promising, innovative ideas that also has the right team behind them. And this might be very unpopular when we are talking to a community of social entrepreneurs. But a lot of the ideas that I have received over the years, it's a lot about like, there's a lot of training, there's a lot of mentorship, there's a lot of like what I call, it's like when you look at public services, right? You can have like a school, it's cool, but it doesn't really have that system level change in it, you know, if you just have one school. So I think it has been a challenge, because oftentimes when you talk about Nairobi, you say that this is a very, very vibrant place. You have a lot of like great ideas, and, you know, you can just go there as an investor, you will find amazing things to invest in, just like that, right? And it's not really the case. Like when you go to some of these events, it could be opening a cafe. That could be one of the best business cases, right? And that's not really what we are looking at when we look at system change, you know? And I think that is actually one of the main challenges, that it's a bit difficult sometimes to find truly innovative system level innovations. Yeah.
Yeah,
but it's also
great.
really hard to come up with that.
Yeah, no, that's great insight, and that's why Ashoka Fellows are a very selected group of entrepreneurs around the world, because these are the ones who during search and selection we look for systemic change approaches. So thanks for the insight, Matthias. Caroline, anything from your end?
Yeah, I think the obvious good example of the collaboration, that you were looking for, is the social impact bonds, where you have the private sector investing, you have a social partner, it could be a social entrepreneur, somebody else who is a service provider, and then you have the government who is paying on for success. But I wanted to give another example also that I think could be insightful in terms of collaboration with engaging all parties. And it's a collaboration that we have with a Kenyan organization and a Kenyan social entrepreneur that I'm sure both Wamuyu and Matthias might know of. It's called Lawala. It's providing community led solutions to transform the health system. And a key part of how they work is recruiting and training community health workers to be out in the community as a first contact point for both preventive and curative services. And they also run a smaller hospital in Lawala. But they have a very good collaboration with the Ministry of Health of Migori County. So the Ministry of Health there is involved in several ways, and both ways also, which I think is important in collaboration. So, for example, Lawala provides training to the health facility employees, and the Ministry of Health is also part of the community health workers and encouraged to also pay a salary to the community health workers, so that the community health workers that have been recruited and trained by Lawala are integrated in the actual healthcare system. So there you have two parties, and then another part, of course, is the central government, the central Ministry of Health, where it's more policy driven and advocacy. And then another party that is important in this collaboration is academia, that we talked a little bit about yesterday. So Lawala works closely together with with universities to work on research-based and proven methods. And then there's the private sector who provides funding. And there are many, of course, private funders working with Lawala. We have established a collaboration between a Swedish health fund called Impilo. So their whole mission is to contribute to better health and healthcare through investing in pharmaceutical industry, in healthcare industry, etc. So their sort of missions are aligned, and they are contributing with funding, but also, and coming back again to the fact that it's the social entrepreneur who has to identify what their needs are. So in this case, Lawala identified human resources as a need where they wanted to strengthen their capacity around how do they work on human resources, both in terms of retention and in terms of attracting the right people, etc. And that's an area where Impilo, the corporate that we work with, has extensive experience from this particular sector. So therefore, we put them together in a more advisory type of collaboration. So I think that's a good example of how the different parties can come together with a joint mission to work towards. Thanks.
Thank you. Santiago, we have some questions in the chat.
Check. Yeah, so there's Maureen. She said that I like the idea of system level change, but what does it mean in practical terms when thinking about a social enterprise in Africa or anywhere in the world? Matthias, would love to hear more from you.
Yeah, so okay, I can give an example of something that we are already doing. So we have a collaboration with an organization called I Like Local, and
You're on mute.
You accidentally pushed the mute.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it's that time of the meeting. So yeah, I have shared a link to a social enterprise that we support. It's called I Like Local, and I'm trying to give this as an example of system level change. We are not quite there yet, but it's the vision, right? So it's a platform that works a bit the same way as Uber, Airbnb, like a platform technology, right? So what we are trying to do with I Like Local is that they are selling sort of like local activities to people who are traveling, right? And who maybe seek to do an impact also while they're traveling, right? So we are helping the CBOs, different places in the world, to sort of come up with an activity for this website, right? And that's actually quite difficult sometimes to understand what's the concept of this I Like Local, because it's those sort of like what you say, like authentic experiences. So we don't want to have this cultural appropriation stuff happening, you know, like there's a lot of difficult things in doing this. Anyway, we train the CBOs, they come up with activities, they go on the website, people book the activity, and then the income model is that they get like the majority of the income, right? You cut all the middlemen. So if you go to Malindi in Kenya, at the coast in Kenya, you would find a lot of brokers in Malindi who works with the community, but they take like 50 to 90% of the income, right? So that's the problem. For example, all the hotels are getting a lot of the income from tourism. So that's like the social problem that we're trying to solve here. And that is a pretty new way of working with like tourism and activities, right? And we are now also trying to challenge Airbnb, because Airbnb is also doing something similar with activities, but they haven't really thought about the safeguarding. So we can also impact them to maybe think about it in a different way. It's funded by Danita. It's a project that runs for the next 4 years. Just an example. Yeah, I can give many examples, but I think I'll stop here.
Great, thanks for that very clear example. There's also Maureen asking if do we have some database or source of information where we can locate all social entrepreneurial initiatives in Africa and their impacts and challenges. I'm not sure who can, if anyone has an insight here. It could be a little bit challenging to map out all these social entrepreneurial initiatives in Africa.
But they can get their Ashoka ones, at least the ones
well, yeah, exactly. Ashoka fellows are there.
The website.
But of course, those are not all the social entrepreneurs initiatives in Africa. But you can start with the Ashoka website and searching there the different fellows. You can filter by country and see those ones in Africa specifically. Shall we go back to you with the final?
Please. Yes, please. Thank you so much. Thanks for the questions. We still have one more question that I'd like Wamuyu to take as she wraps up. So Wamuyu, for the wrap up, in addition to the question you'd be responding to, someone has asked in practical terms, what is system level change? So please let us know and then also share how social entrepreneurs can work together. We have 7 minutes to finish and wrap up.
You're on mute. Yes, sure. Thank you. Working together is, we have come to learn that working together has great benefits. But by saying that it has great benefits, it doesn't mean that it's easy. I think that that's what we need to agree, that it's not easy. An effort is made. We as social entrepreneurs need to see the value that comes in working together, the synergy that we can build in coming together to solve a problem or several problems, the intellect that comes with the different minds from different social entrepreneurs that would be, should I say, thinking through things together and solving solutions or the problems together. So it is in appreciating the value of that collaboration that people come together. And in this case, I'm encouraging social entrepreneurs to come together and think together, not because it is easy, but because it is the thing to do. And that's why we formed the Collaborative Value Platform, because we realize that it's not easy. So if you really can't do it on your own, but you can see the value, then we can help you do that. In terms of the systems, the framework, the systems, the systems, what do we call it, Tiffy? Systems, the frame, yeah.
Systems change.
Systems change.
Thank you. Sometimes this was just plain my mouth. Systems change. It is the change that comes over time. Should I say it's a contribution of changes that come together to get to the tipping point. Like for example, when we look at the area of youth employment, we haven't reached the system. We haven't reached the tipping point. We haven't aligned our solutions in such a way that together we will get to the tipping point. So we cannot say we have a systems change if we're not changing our systems. And systems can come in many ways. This can be in influencing policy, for example. As we work with governments, we influence policy. As we work with other social entrepreneurs, we change the way we do things. And collaboration is one of the ways of bringing us the systems change that we're talking about. So this, by the way, if this is something that we can discuss a whole day, because it has many components. But the point being that it is in bringing these little components together. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. What are the different points in the jigsaw puzzle that need to come together for us to reach the tipping point? And that is what forms the systems change. I think in a nutshell, that's how I see it.
Thank you so much. So we will go to Caroline and Matthias, but Faith has a comment here. She says she works with an NGO. One thing that she would love to see is the setup of micro franchises that work for everyone. So everyone has their pieces. For instance, there's a piece, the investing in the training of the product, the business part of it. Usually it is driven by sales, and initiatives are short-term. Thank you, Faith, for that comment. So for the final remarks, Caroline and then Matthias. We have 4 minutes.
Thank you. I think on that last point, I think that's an excellent idea with the micro franchise, and that's a really good way of both achieving scale and system change, I think. Looking forward to the organization that will take the lead in this, and we're happy to join. And then just to build on to what I think Wamuyo phrased very well and clearly, I think in order to achieve system change, it's essential that you collaborate. I mean, you cannot achieve system change on your own. And there are very many ways of collaborating, some of which we have talked about today. But I would also like to enhance the fact that collaborating between different social entrepreneurs is also very fruitful, I think. And there is a lot to be learned from each other. And there is a lot of greater impact that you can have if you join hands. And that's everything from learning from each other to use that to improve your own activities in your own organization, but also identifying areas where, again, coming back to being true to your theory of change, there are certain aspects that you are the expert on, but those aspects and what you're expert on might not be enough to achieve system change. You need the jigsaw puzzle, like Wamuyo put it so nicely. You need these other players as well. And who are they, and how can you work together in order to have a greater impact, in order to have more leeway in impacting policy, both locally, nationally, and also internationally. And there's so many examples of how you can do this, both very practically, but also in international networks. So that's, I think, also a good way of collaborating on that level.
Thank you. Matthias, you have 1 minute for your final remark.
Yeah, thank you. Just want to thank the audience for joining in. I hope it has been a little bit interesting to listen to the three of us on collaboration. I think that's my main point when it comes to collaboration with NGOs. It's about mapping which NGOs work with, social entrepreneurs and are interested in the idea, and then work on your pitch. And it has to be an NGO pitch. So who are they working with? All that. And then lastly, call them, ask them for a coffee, something like that. Just act on it, because a lot of good stuff can come out of that pretty easily.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This has been very, very enlightening. We really do appreciate all the insights. Thank you. So we will be projecting the feedback for participants. Joanne? Okay, thank you. So please let us know what are your key takeaways from this session. Please put them in the chat box. Thank you very much for joining us. Please put them in the chat box. respond to the question on the screen. Thank you so much. What are your key takeaways from this session? Please respond in the chat box. Thank you very much for joining. It was insightful. The movement for collaboration has started and it is improving. It is not an easy path. I totally agree with you. Thinking carefully about how to bring about systems level change. Yes. So keep them coming. Thank you so much for your time. Systems change is not done alone. Keep them coming, keep them coming. Thank you so much. We do appreciate the time you have spent listening to us. And collaboration is the key word for systems change, like Caroline had mentioned, and Wamuyu as well. So we believe that the information we have gotten from this session is going to help us to think through ways that we can collaborate with the 3 sectors that we have talked about: the government, INGOs, and the private sector in carrying out our systems change work. Signposting your needs as a social entrepreneur to corporate partners, but in a language they understand. And Shumirai says this has been a very informative session. Collaboration is the way to go. I like looking at systems change as a product of the inputs in a jigsaw puzzle. Thanks, Wamuyu and all panelists. I look forward to meeting and working with you soon. Thank you so much, Shumirai. We appreciate that. Also, we would like you to put in the chat box, do you see any opportunities to build on better? Do you see any opportunities that you would like to build on? Also, please respond in the chat box. Maureen says we should all be open to collaborations and more passionate about social and systems change. I totally agree with you. Santiago has just put on the chat box a link for you to find Ashoka Fellows working on different thematic areas. So you can find that on the chat box. And also let us know if you see any opportunities to build on. Thank you so much to everybody who has contributed. Thank you so much to the panelists. Thank you, Caroline, Matthias, and Wamuyu for your time and for sharing. We do appreciate the time that you have spent here with us and all the information that you have shared. Thank you to the panel, to the participants. We appreciate you. Thank you so much to the team who has put this together. We do appreciate all your efforts, and we thank you for coming. So we will call it a wrap. You can reach out to us, and then you can also find Ashoka Fellows using the link that Santiago has shared on the chat box. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Ify, and everyone. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been fun
Thank
and
you.
insightful. Thanks.
It has been. Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.